Hi, a very good evening from IDEALondon. Despite the foliage in the background, we're not in a jungle, we're in London. And we're here today. I've got a company with me called Cybertonica, who are a startup company who we've been supporting for around 6 months now. We've been working with you.
Exactly.
And I've hijacked you just before your event called #HackersGonnaHack. And basically, anyone who doesn't know, IDEALondon is a startup hub that we wanted to create in partnership with EDF Energy and UCL so that we could support entrepreneurs like yourselves and witness your enormous growth and support you as you go on your journey. And you've developed an ingenious solution for the mobile and electronic commerce world. We can talk a bit about that in a second, but crucially, you've put security into everything that you're doing, because obviously online fraud, bit of an issue right now, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So giving you some advice around online fraud prevention, protecting your personal data, and what the cyber criminals are up to and how we can beat them at their own game. So we've got Joshua, we've got Katerina here from Cybertonica. Firstly, Joshua, just how big a deal is online fraud today, and what are the cyber criminals getting up to?
Well, Hazel, thanks, and thanks to Cisco for the help and support you've given to Cybertonica in the last 6 months. It's been very enlightening for us. What I will say is that online fraud is a big deal. People need to be aware of it. And what we're doing with Katerina, who's a cybersecurity expert and on our team and board, is we're building an awareness that transactional environments where you make payments, where people receive your payments, are a key focus of cybercrime today. And there's a reason for that. It's the same reason Jesse James used to respond when they asked why does he rob banks. He would answer, that's where the money is.
That's where the money is, yeah.
And the issue is today that this has become a big and organized industry of crime, collecting people's identities, taking over people's phones. So in particular, a great number of the phones out today have remote control installed by outside people. So there are third parties controlling your phone at certain points that you are not aware of, but we are. So what we try to do is signal those events in a real-time situation to all the parties in the transaction sphere, in the banking sphere, in the financial institutions, and in the end, signal that in a more effective and efficient way to the customer to know that they need to look at their issues around cybersecurity.
And Katerina, you've got quite a personal story as to why you got into this field in the first place. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I joined Cybertonica recently, and I came with the idea that because we talk so much about cybersecurity, we have to educate people, because it's a lot of talks, but nothing happening. And because, when you have your personal experience, when you've been hacked, you're going to create this event, Hackers Gonna Hack, because it's true. And it doesn't matter how old you are and what position you have and what kind of research you're doing or not doing. Because at that time when I was hacked, it was 10 years ago. And at that time, believe me, nobody was believing that, simple person in university would be an interest in the hackers. I was an expert in a completely different field. I was working at developing microprocessors for combustion chambers, for space agency, jet engines. And, it's a quite specific field, especially for a young woman. And then I knew all the people working in this field. And then when I've been hacked, it was a shock, because I prepared the article, I sent it to a very, very good magazine to be published. And then the editor sent me a message that they have this article already, just, published under a different name. And that was a shock.
Yeah.
And this is why I was thinking, now I have to do something to educate myself and then to educate people. This is how my way to cybersecurity started.
Yeah. It's quite an unfortunate fact that sometimes you only care about security after it. I think you wrote in your website or the marketing for this event, you only buy the fire extinguisher after the fire has started in some cases, when what we're trying to do is be much more proactive than that, which is great.
Absolutely.
Quick question around the future of kind of online payments. We keep hearing about this future world where you won't even need a wallet. Everything's paid for on a smart device. How close are we to that future, and what are the security implications of paying for everything with a smart device?
Well, standing here in London in the UK, we're farther away than we would be if we were standing in Shanghai. Mm-hmm. So in China today, what you'll see is almost 60% of all payments transit in some way digitally, and of those, more than half, almost 80% now, I think, are on the mobile. So if you look at the kinds of developments that are taking place there, many people say that that's what will come here. The reason that it's gone so quickly there is because the digital revolution and the mobile revolution happened at the same time, whereas for us it's been a series of historical events. And there are a lot of incumbent players here who were much bigger and more complex and could respond to the change in banking, online banking, and have new products quicker than in the Asian sphere, because there simply weren't that many developed banks and services of that kind. So the truth is, it's going to happen, and it's going to mostly happen on the phone. And one of the things that's happening now is the transition from high street buying to online buying is already more or less done. And it's still growing, 20 to 30%, even more in some countries a year. But it hasn't yet captured more than half of all transactions, but it will in the future. And at that stage, more than half of those transactions will be done on the mobile. So a lot is going to be focused on the mobile device, and a lot of what happens there is authentication, which is the process of saying, I am who you think I am, and this is my means of payment, and that is my money. And that is where our technology is going to serve the wider community, because not only do you want to be sure that if your phone is being used for payments, that it's being used by you, but as time goes, more larger payments will be made by phone. Thousands, even tens of thousands will be paid on the phone. They are today, but it's a minority. And the limits that we have now will disappear because the system won't cater for those types of limits. So you need a system like ours that connects the dots between what the behavior is of the customer, what the phone identity is, and what the banking identity is, without interfering with the person's privacy. So one of the issues we see coming, and the reason we wanted to do Hackers Gonna Hack, is that the transaction environment is where identity is located now. And if somebody steals your identity, they can steal a great deal more than just money. They can steal relationships. They can break down your operations as a family or a household by entering your house or using electronics to get into your locks. So there's a lot more at stake than just the fraud, the reparation for the fraud, the insurance to cover the fraud that took place. That's already many hundreds of billions of lost funds per year around the world. And there are numbers that would suggest that indirectly it's almost $1 trillion, which is a significant piece of the world economy. So that is only going to increase because, unhappily, many powerful artificial intelligence and machine learning tools that were not meant to be in the public domain now are. And for that, you need to fight fire with fire, and that's why we developed machine learning and AI to prevent these intrusions and these identity kidnappings from taking place. So in our view, we're not far away from what you asked. The mobile phone is going to be the center of alternative payment, but there are many more forms of payment possible now because of open banking and the open banking API and the new regulations that are allowing for young and smaller competitors to enter the financial and the payment sphere. And to control all of those at once simply with the old systems is not possible. They're too rules-based, they're too static, and they don't take true context into view. And the context you can only build with very complex data configurations that we can measure and most people cannot, most companies cannot.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I can
you go ahead.
Something very different, because I think it's kind of the personal or country experience. We are all different. We are all in this digital world, and we're trying to go for all these new innovations, but we still have our parents. They are not using Skype or mobile phones mostly, or they know that the good cash in the pocket or under the mattress is still a very good thing. So, till we have them alive, and hopefully it lasts for longer, we still are not moving to this new generation. Of course, like young people, my daughter, her friends, they will use, and they're already using these technologies. But for the older generation, it's a complicated question, and I don't think it will come quicker.
Yeah. I guess what you were talking about earlier is Internet of Things devices. So I guess smart printers who realise themselves that they're out of print or out of toner, they order it themselves, and that transaction has got to be as secure as if it was a person making it, which is really important. Katrina, a question for you around personal data and just some advice for viewers who obviously want to protect their personal data online. We do know that there is a new law coming in, May 2018, called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. But what would be your advice to people to protect their personal data?
You know what, dealing with the young generation, because I was teaching students for a long time, and actually I'm still doing this, I always tell them, be careful sharing your information. And the problem is, they're young, they don't understand what's happening, and they're happy to share all they have. It's a natural trust. And they used to go to these social nets and post their photos, ideas. Sometimes, they get some interesting tickets to some shows, and they show them immediately, and then there are some frauders that immediately, scan them and go quicker than, the real owners are. So I have to say that you have to be very smart doing this, very wise. And you have to have this basic knowledge of the new technologies, because otherwise you share this information like that. Even with the rule, with these restrictions, with the rights to be forgotten, you have to keep in mind, if you put information into virtual space, it's there. So if somebody decides to get it, believe me, without any rules, they will get it, and then can compromise you in future. This is a big danger. So, of course, we're sharing this personal data because, we need to buy things online. We actually do everything online. And this is why, due to this fact, we share this information. But at least you have to keep in mind that share with those whom you trust.
Yep.
And be careful.
Yep. Question. Trust but verify, I think, is the official term. Just a quick question about IDEALondon, actually, and your experience of working in this space and where you see you guys going in the future.
Well, IDEALondon for us, it was a big honor, first of all, to work with Cisco and the other companies that Cisco brought to the hub. In addition to that, we've had a very good experience in the sense that we've hooked up with a bunch of other companies who can use our machine learning and AI with their products to grow more quickly, which makes us partners. And in some cases, we've also been able to look at Cisco customers as potential POCs, proof of concept for the technology, and that's super validating for us. On top of that, I think the atmosphere created here is loose enough to be fun, and it's structured enough to be productive. So it's not like just a free-for-all. And at the same time, the events that are produced by the teams like your own here are really high quality. So I can say without hesitating that we had one event that gave rise to a significant investment in our company. And I know we're not alone. There are other companies that can tell the same story. So it's a very good place for us, and we hope to be here long enough to go through the next stage of our development with Cisco, which is to become a Cisco vendor. So we entered the Cisco vendor qualification program recently. And when that gets rolling, I think it's going to be even more important to us and to our shareholders to have this relationship grow over time. So it's been a very productive thing.
Thank you. All right, one more question, I'll let you get off to your event because I'm just holding you captive right now. The future. What does the future look like in terms of online fraud? Any future trends that we need to be aware of? And what would be your advice?
Well, I'll give a short answer, and then we'll let Katja also speculate, because she's got a lot of theoretical knowledge. I would say that the future is definitely going to be heading towards a blockchain type of online security and online payment. But that's going to take a long time. It's going to take several years. Basically, what's happening now in this area that we work in is the old systems of siloed data and static databases and rule sets is dying away in favor of the contextual artificial intelligence-led thing that we do, and our competitors also do, which is growing at a pace of many times X per year. So we know one competitor in the US who 5 years ago was the same size we are, and now they're worth $500 million. So that gives you an idea. And on top of that, I think what's going to happen is we are going to serve as a bridge to what we call security with privacy. So there's a movement, and I'm sad to say many governments seem indifferent to its existence. There is a movement to compromise privacy in favor of security. And what we're saying is that using math, you can have both.
Yeah.
So you can have an identity that is an online secured identity that's used for payments, that's used for authenticating, that doesn't give a direct tie to your privacy. So we respect GDPR, and the PSD2 is going to be also a very interesting transition for the payments market. But in the future, that identity will have to be in some way anonymized so that it can't be used against you or used without your knowledge. And we'll be part of that movement.
I would definitely say that we have to be prepared for the growth of online fraud because we moved online, we do everything online. And we have to understand that if we don't use machine learning and artificial intelligence, as Joshua was saying, it's very complicated. But even we have kind of really great specialists in this field, very good fraud and risk managers, they're humans. And the amount of data is tremendous because we talk about data explosion. So how a person, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 10 people can analyze this huge flow of data. So definitely we have to be ready to use these smart platforms, which would help us to analyze the traffic in real time, to see this fraudulent activity. So we have to be ready to use this. This will simplify our lives, definitely. The second thing I have to tell you that we have to expect that, as Joshua said before, that people who create the fraud, they are very sophisticated. Yeah. 10 years ago it could be individuals. Now it's really, they set up like companies, yeah. Believe me, with great investors. Mm-hmm. They have great technicians, they're very well trained, and they are ready to attack. If you do a little mistake, they will catch it. Mm-hmm. So we are in a time, it's a kind of race between them and us. Yeah. And we have to understand that sometimes they are ahead of us. Hopefully sometimes we are. So we have to keep this in mind and educate people. It doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are. You have to know the basic knowledge. Otherwise, you would be in trouble. This I can definitely say.
Yeah, I'd just add as a word to the viewers here that if somebody contacts you and seems to know more about you than they should, then they probably shouldn't know what they know. And that's one of the most classic cases is social engineering, which is somebody who pretends to know a friend of yours overseas who needs money, or somebody pretends to know that you're planning a trip and you need a loan or whatever it is. Those attempts to harvest, is what they call it, your details, go on every day. They're organized by very sophisticated individuals using technologies that are not too far behind our own. And you need to be very aware of that. So if something seems too good, or somebody seems to know a lot more than they should about you, you should be wary and make sure that you haven't been hacked. Yeah.
Well, it's good to know we've got companies like yourselves who are fighting the good fights, along with Cisco, and taking the fight to them. I can't believe I'm going to quote the Lion King, but I'm going to because I've started now. But there's that famous quote, I think it's the meerkat, who says that sometimes bad things happen and there's nothing you can do about it. The logic's quite flawed because sometimes you can do something about it, and this is great advice for people who are wanting to move into the digital future but obviously want to protect their personal information. There's things that you can do to protect that and be more secure, and that's the message I wanted to leave people with.
Yeah, I think that's true.
If you're interested in hearing more about what these guys are doing, your Twitter is @Cybertonica Limited, I think.
Indeed.
Check out their website, check out what they're doing, and also have a look at IDEA London if you're interested in what we're doing in this space as well. But I'll let you get to your events. We're going to tell you all about what Hackers Gonna Hack was all about in a future blog. But otherwise, we will see you very soon. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.